Hey, we're in a series called I Choose. If you missed it, we're basically understanding this, that essentially you and I are the sum total of the choices that we make. Who we are today is impacted greatly by the choices that we made growing up. And who we're going to be tomorrow and in our future is greatly influenced by the choices that we're going to make today. Choices are important. Choices matter. Big choices, little choices. We all make all kinds of choices all the time. And we talked last week a little bit about sometimes we make choices by not choosing something. We're actually making a choice to choose something else. Last week we talked about this. I challenged you. I asked you if you would choose purpose over popularity. Last week we had a solid, excited group that was just engaged and ready to talk and laugh and maybe not. But this week we're going to have that. I feel it this morning. Thank you so much for being part of what I'm going to call the Frozen Chosen that decided that today it was worth it. Yes. It was worth it to get out of bed. Last week I said you're committed and you're better than everyone else. This week you're better than everyone that even was here last week. So thank you so much for being a part of it. But we asked and challenged you to choose purpose over popularity. Choosing to please God in everything that you do and not worry so much about what other people think about you. And you can't please everybody, but you can please God. And so we talked about that, choosing purpose over popularity. This week, I want to challenge you to choose surrender over control. Would you say this with me? Would you say, I choose surrender over control? Let's get start with it. Ready? I choose surrender over control. Amen. Now you come up and preach if you want. I mean, that's about where I'm at right now. That's right. It is not easy. But let's be honest. Let's start out here for a little bit. Let's be honest. How many of you would say that in some area of your life you love to be in control? Raise your hand. If you're feeling a burning sensation inside of you, to raise the hand of those around you, you need this message. You are a control freak, and it's okay because Jesus can set you free from that. Would anybody just be honest and just label themselves this morning and say, I know that I am a control freak? Let's just put it out there. Okay, good. There's a few of us that would dub that. Most of us in some area want control. We like it. Maybe it's a simple area, maybe at work, right? Maybe at work you're like, is my way or the highway? And if it's not you at work, you work for a boss that's that way, right? If it doesn't go their way, it's not right. My way or the highway. Maybe it's at home. Everything has a place. Everything has a specific order and a specific place. And if it goes out of place, and if you do it the wrong way, I was told by my wife that many people said last week I picked on her because I told a couple stories about her. If you thought that was picking on her, this week I'm going to pick on her for a moment. Last week I was just explaining, you have to check this. I thought I was just lifting her up and how awesome she was. This week, a little bit of picking is going to happen because my wife is a self-proclaimed control freak. She knows it. I didn't tell her it. She thought of it on her own, and she had to control how we said it, right? She's a control freak. And at our house, she said I could give this example. This is a very light one. But at our house, I try to help out sometimes. Yeah, with the kids and stuff. And so I'm helping out in the morning to get their book bags ready, or backpacks, whatever they call them here, book bag, backpacks. I know there's one that you guys like and I don't, and so we'll just say book bags. And in the snow time, you got to put their tennis shoes in the book bag, and you got lunches, and you got water bottles, and you got snacks, and all this stuff. So I'm helping out one time, and I put the snacks in, some strawberries, put them in there, and then their shoes in, and then the lunchbox, and then... You already understand this, right? And then the water bottle, and then the binders, right? And my wife's like, That's not how it goes. Like, what do you mean? There's an order to how you put things in the book. Did you know you need to put the shoes on the bottom? And then you got to put the binder, and then the lunchbox, and then you got to put the water bottle. Well, there's one water bottle. It goes on the outside. The snacks, the strawberries got to go on the top so they don't get smashed. But there's also a water bottle inside the lunchbox just in case the kid forget that they have a water bottle on the outside of their book bag. I don't know. I'm just saying that sometimes we like to control certain areas. For me, since I'm picking on her for a moment, for me it's driving. Oh, man. I love it when I'm driving. I can stand it sometimes when my wife is driving. And it's nothing against her. It's just I got to be in control when it comes to driving, okay? When she drives, it's like, oh, you can pass now if you want. Are you going fast enough? You can go 2 miles an hour faster if you want to. Don't put on cruise. It's like I have to be in control. It's a struggle that I have when it comes to driving. She never pulls out fast enough on Saginaw out here. I'm just saying, never. And thankfully, we're getting that light. How many of you are super pumped about the light out on Saginaw? All right. I'm excited, but I'm going to miss the challenge of just seeing how fast I can. I can make it out there. That's very honest. Like, I mean that. I'm going to miss it. I'll tell you a story about control and driving, since that's my weakness. I was driving one time. I was young, in college-ish, and I had a Jeep Wrangler, and take the front doors off, take the top off. It was a beautiful sunny day. We're driving down the highway about 60 miles an hour, going over a bridge. My parents are a couple cars in front of me. It's me in the driver's seat. My brother is next to me. We look as cool as can be. Everything's going well. I looked down to change the radio or put a CD in, something like that, and took my eyes off the road. And my brother noticed that in front of us, everyone decided to slam on their brakes on the highway, on the bridge. I didn't see it because I was a little distracted. So he decides in this moment that he is going to take control of my steering wheel while I'm driving. This might have when all this control issue started for me. So I'm driving. He grabs the wheel to turn me out of the left lane to get me in the right lane so I don't hit the car in front of me. And when he does that, he overcorrects us just a hair. And so we begin to turn this way to go off the bridge, and I freak out. So I grab the wheel back. I'm like, that's mine. What you doing, right? And I whip it back the other way, spin all the way around, facing the opposite direction on the highway, come to a complete stop. All the cars behind us stopped. My car died because of the stick shift, and I'm just looking at everyone, and I waved. And thankfully, I look at him. I was like, you good? He's like, uh-huh. And Jeep Wrangler, they just turn around on a dime, right? So I just whipped it back around, took off, kept going, about 2 miles down the road, pull up in the stop sign next to my mom and dad. He looks over, he goes, you mess yourself? I was like, maybe. And all I remember thinking was, I look at my brother, I said, why did you grab my steering wheel? Like, what were you thinking? Why are you trying to control this? It's not yours. This is mine to control, okay? And I think that's where it all started. For you, it may be something as simple as the TV remote, right? Okay, there's some of us is like, when the TV is on, the remote is in my hand. I don't care if I'm watching or not, I'll be sleeping, but you try to take the remote, it's in my hand. We all have our areas. Maybe it's your finances. It's like, it's my money, I can do it my way. Maybe it's your kids. You're like, I'm going to train them and teach them to do everything I want them to do, and they're going to do it exactly how I want them to do all the way until they're 30, and then I'll let them out of the house, and I've made all the decisions for them, and life goes well. We all have something that we try to control. And it's funny, but the reality is, it might be connected to a bigger issue in our life. There may be a spiritual issue going on here, because the reality is, whenever we try to control something that is not ours to control, it's a reflection of a spiritual issue. We're trying to be, in that one area, we're trying to be like God. We're trying to be God. We're saying, my way is better than your way. I want to be in control because this is mine to have. It's mine to have. We're going to start this morning with one of the most popular verses in the entire Bible. You've heard it spoken from this stage multiple times, but I want you to listen. Even if you've heard it 1,000 times before, I want you to listen like it's the very first time you've ever heard this verse. Are you ready? Okay, good. I'm ready. I was just making sure everybody else is ready. Actually, can I share one more thing? I forgot I put this in here. So I said I was going to pick on my wife a little bit. So maybe for you, I forgot it's my notes, and sometimes I stay away from them. Maybe for you, it's schedules. How many of you are like a schedule, like everything's got to be right in schedule and perfect in order? My wife this is one of her fun areas. And so I brought a picture to show you one of our last snow days. Can we show that real quick? This is one of our snow days. This is what we did on our relaxing snow day. So you had to make sure that everything had an order. Every half an hour, we had something planned out, just in case. Now, if you have kids like ours, you know that this was for her sanity, to make sure we can change it. You don't want to see what they did, right? But no, dance party, like this is important stuff. But the thing is, she's got it in schedules. All right, let's go to Proverbs chapter 3. I love you, honey, very much. She sent me that picture, just so you know. Like, I got to see it. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, you probably heard this before, but we're going to listen to it with new ears and fresh ears and understand that this, just so you know, this is about surrender, giving up control, and surrender. This verse is all about surrender over control. Check it out. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Trust in the Lord. It starts with trust in the Lord. What does that mean? It means surrendering. Trust in the Lord with what? All of your heart. And every time I look at this verse and think of this verse, I think of your heart is essentially everything that makes you who you are. It's your life. And what is being said here is that we need to surrender our entire being, our entire life to the Lord. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. It's basically saying, God, my life is yours to control. So the first part is clearly about surrendering. And then he says, now give up control. So first surrender, and now give up control. Not only do you trust in the Lord with all your heart, but you lean not on your own understanding. You got to give up control. You got to give up control. Trust in the Lord. Lean not on your own understanding. This is not easy, as somebody read my notes earlier and said. This is a difficult thing to do, to give up control. Why? Because we like to control, because when we're in control, we know who is controlling things. Does that make sense? Like, I know me, and I trust me, and I like me. And so I think that I can do it the right way. But when we have to give up control, that means we're putting our trust in someone or something else, and we're not the ones in the driver's seat, and it gets a little bit dicey. We get a little scared. Now, I am flying on an airplane on Tuesday, and I have never once flown on an airplane and decided when there's turbulence to go up and knock on the cockpit and say, "Excuse me, sir, let me have control of the," do they have a steering wheel? We'll call it a steering wheel. I don't even know what's in there. See, this is terrible. I trust the pilot, right? Maybe some of you have, but I doubt any of us have ever been like, "Excuse me, I can do a better job than you. Excuse me, pilot, let me take the reins. Let me have control." No, I sit back, I enjoy the pretzels and the water, and I watch a movie, and I relax, and I can have peace because I trust that the pilot has done his homework, is well-trained, and knows what he's doing. I have an okay trust in them. I can surrender control when I know who's in control. Well, here it tells us to trust in the Lord. And sometimes I think it's helpful to be reminded of who we're placing our trust in if we're going to trust in him. So I wanted to share a verse, Isaiah 55. This is a great verse for me to help remember, who am I giving my control up to? Isaiah 55 says this, "My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says the Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything you can imagine. For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts." See, when you know who you're giving control up to, it's easier. This is the person that we're supposed to trust with our entire life. The one that thoughts are nothing like your thoughts. And guess what? That's a good thing. His ways are far greater than your ways, and that's a good thing. We get to surrender and give up our control and put it in the hands of God, whose thoughts are higher and ways are higher. And then what does it say? When you do this, what happens? He will make your path straight. He will lead you and guide you and straighten out your life. His thoughts are better. His ways are better. His plan is better. Let me say this very clearly. His life that he has for you is far greater than any life that you have for yourself. His plan and his purpose for your life is far greater than anything you can dream up, think up, imagine. You think you have a good idea of where you want to be in 5 years? God has a better idea. His plan is better than yours. His thoughts, way better, greater, higher, better ways, plans, purposes. He has a better plan for your life than you do for yourself. And so we can trust this verse. We trust in the Lord with all of our heart. We surrender. Lean not, we give up control. And then he says it, let me say it again, in all your ways, in all of your life and in all of your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. He will guide you and lead you and straighten out your life. Now, it's not easy. We said that already. Many of us get stuck in what I'll call a control cycle because the more we try to control, the more we're afraid of losing control. And then the more we're afraid of losing control, the more we try to control. And then the more we're afraid of losing control, the more we try to control. And we get stuck in this worry and fear and control, and it consumes us. And we're essentially trying, when we do this, trying to control everything, we're trying to edge God out of this equation, and we're trying to say, God, I want to control because I can do this better than you. Actually, you said your thoughts are higher than mine, but I think mine are better. My way is better. My purpose is better. My plan actually is better. Let me give you an example from Scripture in the OT. The Old Testament, we know them as Abraham and Sarah, but at this point in time, they were Abram and Sarai. So God changed their name just a little bit into our story. So Abram and Sarai, they try to control some things. These were some control freaks. One time, Abraham, he tried to take control, and he was afraid and worried about a situation. So he said, "This isn't my wife Sarai, it's my sister." And he actually did that twice, I think, and that didn't go so well. And then this time, the one that we're going to talk about is kind of like the big moment where many of you may know this story. But Abram and Sarah, they tried to control something big time. Instead of choosing surrender, they chose control. And so here it is. They couldn't have children, but God told them they were going to have kids. God actually made a promise to Abram, and he said, "You are going to be the father of many nations." He says, your descendants are going to be so vast and so big. He's like, it's going to be crazy. I'm going to bless people through you. It's going to be incredible. You're going to be the father of many nations. But they were old. And Abraham's like, I'm old, Sarai's old, and we haven't had any kids yet. How are we going to be the father of many nations? I am not even a father of one person. So time went by. God made this promise. God told him his purpose in life was to be the father of many nations. But God didn't do two things. God did not give him details or timing. Have you ever felt like God has called you to something, but he didn't give you the details or the timing or the exact plan? He didn't put up a schedule on the whiteboard at your house and tell you when things were going to happen? But you knew you were going to have a snow day and some good things were going to happen today, but he didn't give you the details and plans. That's not an easy place to be, right? And that's where Abram and Sarai found themselves, and so they decided to choose control over surrender because God didn't give them details or the plan. So look what happens. Look what happens. In Genesis 16, it says this, Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had not been able to bear children for him, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, Lord, the Lord has prevented me from having children, so go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her. And Abram agreed with Sarai's proposal. So God said, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to make you the father of many nations. It's going to happen. And then some time went by, and they're like, we're getting old. It's not happening. Our way's better. I got a plan, Sarai says. I got a plan. Abram, Hagar, let's do this. All right, you guys go together. I'll just have children through her. It'll be fine. Everything's going to work out great. And Abram's like, okay. They go and take care of business. And Abram and Hagar have a child together. And guess what? Immediately, drama and strife starts to happen. I know you're surprised about this. Immediately, this starts to go down in not an awesome way. Sarai is mad at Hagar because she's like they don't have a good relationship now. And then Sarai is mad at Abram because he's like, what did you do that for? And he's like, what do you mean, what did I do that for? Didn't we agree to this, right? Wasn't this our plan? And they realized they chose to take control over a situation because they didn't understand how to surrender to God's plan and purpose. And so Abram and Hagar have a son named Ishmael. But I love this about the story, that even though all that went down, like God still took care of his plan and his purpose. Even though they chose this route, God said, hey, I'm still going to handle this. And so God gives them a son. God allows Sarah to have a son with Abraham, and his name was Isaac. So here's what happens. I just want to show you how this one issue of control led to some crazy things that are still going on today. I don't know, maybe you don't understand the big picture, but I learned this as I was studying this. So from Abraham and Sarah comes Isaac, and through the descendants of Isaac we get Israel, and through Israel we get Jesus. Okay? Abraham, Isaac, Israel, Jesus. Okay? But through Abraham and Hagar, we get Ishmael. From Ishmael comes Palestine. Out of Palestine comes Muhammad. How many years later are we still dealing with crisis and struggle and strife and drama between Israel, Palestine, Muhammad, Jesus? I mean, this is crazy stuff that all comes back to this idea of control where they chose to control God. So if you're looking at Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, did they trust God? Oh, hang on. Did they trust God? I mean, not really, right? Did they lean not on their own understanding? No, they tried to control it. Did they submit to him in all their ways? Not in this instance. They failed Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. They did not pass the test. So what can we learn from this story? If you're taking notes, maybe you can learn this. Never sleep with a woman named Hagar. Okay. Maybe that's not exactly the point of the story that we should have, but that's one truth. Now, maybe you're never going to be tempted to do that, okay? Maybe you're not going to be tempted to do that, but you will be tempted in life when things don't go your way and you don't start to see results the way that you want them to try and take control of something that you were not meant to take control of. Maybe you're a single gal, Christian single girl, and you're saying, I need to find me a good Christian single man, but you can't find a good Christian single man, and so you just say, I'll just settle for a single man. And you find a single man and you think, well, he's cute and he's got a nice smile and he treats me well. I'll just change him. Right? I can change him out. It's called missionary dating. It'll be just fine. I can get him on, it'll be all good. Everything will be fine. I'll just change him. No big deal. I'll take control. Or maybe it's a financial thing. Maybe right now you're struggling financially and you got yourself in a situation and you're looking at your money and you're saying, man, I know that God has given me everything I have. I know that God has desires for me to give back to him as an act of worship, just a portion of what he's given me. And I know that that's what God calls me to do. I know that that's what he wants me to do, to trust him with my finances. But as I'm looking at it, I think I can control the finances a little bit better if I just took it all and took care of it my way. So I'm going to choose to control my finances and not really allow God to. I don't want to surrender that part of my life. Maybe at work you're always knowing that you should be delegating things, but you like it your way and you can do it better. And so you're going to just take control and not try and surrender anything to anybody else. Maybe it's at home, you're what they would call a helicopter parent. Don't elbow anyone sitting next to you, but maybe you would be called a helicopter parent, and you're just saying, you know what, I'm going to make all the decisions for my kids now. You got a homework assignment? Oh, let me help. Let me just do it for you. You know what? I can just do it for you because you got to get good grades. Because if you get good grades, then you get into the right school. And if you get in the right school, you can get in the right job. And so let me just take care of all your decisions until you turn 30. And then we'll let you go, and mom will take care of everything. We'll be just fine. I don't know what it is for you, but what I want you to do is I want you to take a moment and take your notes out if you have notes, or take a piece of paper out if you have a piece of paper, or take a pen and write it in your hand if you want to. And I just want you to, for a moment, just write down an area in your life that you know that you try to control. Just take a moment to just think of that area, whatever's popped into your mind as we started this service so far, whatever's popped in your mind, that there's this area that you just try to control. Maybe it's your kids. Maybe it's your kids' kids. Well, they're my grandkids. I have to raise them the right way. My kids don't know any better. I raise them, you know. That was funny. That was a joke on yourself. Whatever it is, just take a moment, write it down. There's an area somewhere that you're trying to have control. Maybe it's your whole life. Maybe you're like, I've never given up control to anybody. This is my life. And maybe you're sitting there going, I'm not going to let you control me. I ain't writing nothing down. You see the problem we have. For the rest of our time, here's what I want to do. We're going to ask the question, is this something that is mine to control, or is it something that I'm supposed to trust the Lord with all my heart? And so we're going to ask three quick questions today on how we know when to choose surrender over control. With our whole life, we're supposed to surrender it all to God, right? With our entire life, everything we have, we're supposed to say, God, this is your life, you're in control. But there are some areas in our life that we try to hold on to, and so we want to ask ourselves, is this an area that I need to surrender or try and control? How do I know when to choose? So first question is, everybody say, number one. Number one. All right, first question, say this with me. Is it worth my concern? Say it with me. Is it worth my concern? Do you know there's a lot of things that we worry about and fret about and get concerned about that aren't worth any time or energy to spend on? Did you know that? Maybe you didn't know that because you're a control freak and you think everything needs to be thought about and worried about and freaked out about and concerned about. There are a lot of things that we worry about and think about and spend time and energy on that really don't matter that much, that aren't worth our concern. Like, excuse me, honey, I'm so glad that you tried to help me with laundry, but did you know that you didn't fold the sleeves in the right way? The sleeves are supposed to go in this way, and then you fold it another half, and then you fold it one more half, and then no, you guys don't do that. Maybe it's the towels. Did you know the towels had to be folded in half and then folded 3 times? Because if they're folded 3 times, then they have them, and then they put in the order in the right, and they color code. In my closet, obviously, you have to have color-coded closets, right? Are those, at the end of the day, is it really worth getting worried about and fretting about and freaking out about whether or not your kids, as they helped you fold laundry, they got folded the correct way? I remember growing up, my dad, I'm pretty sure he still does this, and hopefully he never listens to my message. But I'm pretty sure he still does. My dad had a control issue over his socks. Now, I don't know what you do, but my dad did not allow you to, I'd help with laundry, and I would take his socks, and you take the top, and you roll it down so they stay together, right? How many of you do that with your socks? Not my dad. Socks have to be folded. I'm like somebody said it, Dad, not me. She was outraged about this, but I thought it was insane, all right? Folded socks. Like, he was like, and if you would help with laundry, he'd be like, who did my laundry today? Like, what do you mean? The socks go folded, right? I just thought that was a crazy thing. Like, at the end of the day, does it really matter if your socks are folded or not in your drawer? No, it doesn't. I freak out all the time about my kids sitting on the kitchen counter. I don't know why. This is an area, if I'm writing it down, it's like, that's one of those areas, like I come home and our couch is butted up next to a counter and they like to climb up on the counter and sit and hang out. And I don't understand why it's cooler up there, but it is cooler up there. And it drives me insane. And sometimes I get so worked up about it and so upset about it. I'm like, really? At the end of the day, does it matter if my kids are sitting on the counter? No, unless I'm serving you food, then it matters. But it doesn't matter in this moment. And so sometimes we get so worried and so freaked out about this. I think it was about a year or two ago, my wife brought this phrase into our family. It was called, and she got it from a book or a message or someone way smarter and spiritual than I am. And it said this, in light of eternity. In light of eternity. So if I was writing this down, I would write, is it worth my concern? And I would tag this on at the end, in light of eternity. Chase, what do you mean? In light of eternity, the fact that we're going to spend forever and ever with Christ, is it really worth me getting so frustrated about my kids on the counter? No. If they spill water on the ground, and I hate messes, if they spill anything on the ground, is it really worth wigging out and freaking out and making such a big deal about it and getting so frustrated about it. I don't think so. In light of eternity, there are much bigger deals. You know, you have neighbors that are on their way to spend eternity separated from God. That's a pretty big deal. That's worth your concern. Did you know that we live in the town of Lansing, that there's plenty of people that aren't in church on Sunday, and it's not about church, but they're not hearing the gospel. There are plenty of people where you work and plenty of people that you know that do not understand that God loves them and that Jesus died for them. That's worth your concern, because in light of eternity, that matters. Not whether or not my dad has his socks folded, okay? In light of eternity, is this really worth my concern? Did you know that worry is weighty? Does that make sense to you? Worry is heavy, and stress is a burden. I was talking with someone this week, we were having lunch, and we were just chatting about this idea of, like, he says, sometimes I can physically, like, feel when I'm stressed. Do you ever feel that? Like, you can just physically feel like, like you kind of have this, like there's a weight on you, right? Like worry just brings this stress and weight. And I want you to listen very carefully. Jesus wants you to be free of that. Like Jesus didn't create this world so that you could live in it and always walk around being so weighed down by worry and stress. Listen to what he says in Matthew chapter 11. He says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you," what does he say? Rest. Jesus says, I will and I want to give you rest. Stop carrying the weight of worry and control and find rest in Jesus. He wants to give you rest. So sometimes we got to ask, is this really worth my concern? The answer sometimes is yes. When my brother saw that we were about to run into the back of the car, the answer would be, yes, this is worth my concern. The second question we got to ask ourselves is it mine to control? Okay, if the first question is it worth my concern, the second question is this mine to control? The steering wheel on my car is not yours to control, it's mine, okay? Man, that wasn't even a joke, but I thought I'd get at least a laugh. And it's mine to control. Is it mine to control? Sometimes the answer is yes. Did you know that God won't do everything for you? God doesn't do everything for you. God created you, and sometimes he wants to work through you. God can, and he wants us to surrender our entire life to him and trust in his leading. But God doesn't just sit back and do everything for you while you sit back and say, all right, God, I got myself in this financial mess. I need some money, so just whenever you want to bless me. Like, that's not how God works. Sometimes he says, no, I gave you the ability to work. Go work. And you're going to have to save more money than you spend. And you might have to say no to a few things like Taco Bell every other day. You might have to say no to DirecTV for a little bit. For a moment, you might have to live a little bit differently now so that you can get yourself out of the mess you made. Sometimes God says, hey, I am in control, but I need you to do some things. There's a difference between surrendering control and relinquishing responsibility. There's a difference between surrendering control and relinquishing responsibility. When you surrender control, that doesn't mean you give up responsibility. You can do something about it. If your marriage is struggling and hurting, what can you do? You cannot control your spouse. You can try, that's not going to work well. But you can control you. You can control your heart and your attitude and how you respond and how you submit to them and how you love them and how you respect them. You can control how you talk to them and how you try and say, hey, we should probably talk to someone about this. Hey, we should probably go and do something about this. Hey, maybe we should buy the book Love and Respect because maybe that could impact our marriage in a positive way. You can do some things, but you can't control everything. So there might be some times in your life where you say, like, I need to do something. This might be mine to control. But when we get to the end of that answer and we say, is this mine to control? Or the third question would be, is it God's alone? Is it for God alone? Sometimes we're asking, is it mine to control? What can I do as I surrender my life to God? Maybe there's some part that I can play in this. But then when we look at it and see this isn't mine to control, oftentimes we need to realize that it was for God alone. Is this one of those areas that I'm desperately trying to control, but it's not for me to control? I want to share one more verse with you. My wife calls this verse a recipe for worry. I like that, a recipe for worry. See, control, I believe, leads you to worry and anxiety. When you're always trying to control something, you're always trying to be in control, you end up worrying a lot because you can't control everything. And so control leads to worry and anxiety. So this verse fits really well when we're talking about surrender over control. Philippians 4, 6 and 7 says this, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. So he starts off with saying, don't worry. And for many of us in the room, that's all you needed. I'm not a worrier. So when I read that verse that just says, don't worry, I'm like, all right, don't worry. That's easy. I can do that. And Jesus is preaching one time, and he says, don't worry. And then he lists all these reasons why worry doesn't work anyway. Anybody remember that sermon? 1.5 of you? All right, it was mine. I preached it. I thought it was really awesome, and it was okay. But here, Paul says, hey, don't worry. And then instead of just giving the reasons why you shouldn't worry, he says, I'm going you to replace worry with something else. So he says, don't worry, and he says instead, meaning give up control, concern, worry, stress, freaking out. Give all that up for this. Here's what he says replace it with. Replace it with prayer. And he gives you 2 things to do in prayer. Number 1, tell God what you need. Number 2, thank God for what you have. These are the 2 pieces that you need to replace worry and control with. Tell God what you need. We need to stop insulting God by saying, well, guess all I can do now is pray. Sometimes we use prayer as the last resort, right? Well, I'll see if I can fix it my way, and if I can get this handled and I can get this taken care of, then we're good. But if I can't, I know I can always go to God. He's always there for me. Well, God, I've tried everything else. I'll try you. No, prayer is not a last resort. It's a first line of offense. You have the ability to go to God in prayer. The creator of the universe, the creator of who you are, he created everything inside this planet, and we have the freedom to go to him. It says we can boldly come before the throne of God, and he hears us when we call. Prayer is powerful. We're going to hit a series after this one called Prayer Is and talk about all the great things prayer is, and I'm just telling you, prayer is a first line offense that we have. And so when you're worried about something, when you're freaking out about something, you need to go to God and tell him what you need. Cast all your cares on him, for he cares for you. You need to go to God and tell him what you need. But you don't just stop there. You don't just stop there. What's the next thing he says? Tell God what you need and then thank him for all that you have. Thank him for all that he's done. You don't just stop on throwing everything at God and say, there it is, God. Blah. Take all of this from me. You say, God, I'm giving this up to you. I surrender this to you. This one area, my whole life, this other area, this area, that area, I'm not in control. You take control. And as I give this up to you, I just want to thank you for all you have done for me. Can I just thank you for what you have done? Our perspective can change when we remember what God has already done for us. Sometimes as I'm praying for something, I remember that as I'm looking forward and asking God to help me in this situation in my life, sometimes it's good for me to look over my shoulder and remember what he did yesterday, or remember what he did a few months ago, or remember how he helped me that one time in the past in this similar situation. So as I take a step forward, I just take a look back, and I'm like, man, thank you, God. Remember that last time I was praying for this, and you just came through? Man, I need you again in this moment. Thank you for all you have done. Thank you for all that I have. And then what happens? Then it says you can experience peace. And here's the peace you get. It's a peace that exceeds your understanding and guards your heart and your mind. I think it guards your heart and your mind and protects you from more and more worry. You receive peace from God. There are some things that you can do when you're trying to control a situation. Some areas of your life that God is saying, hey, I want you to actually be a part of this. If you're struggling in your marriage right now, you can make some changes in your life. You can work on your heart, but you can't change your spouse. You can't. That's for God alone. And so you go to God and you say, okay, God, I surrender this area to you. I thank you. I need our marriage. I need your help in this marriage. I need you to come and speak into this moment because we're struggling right now. But I thank you that we're married. I thank you that you brought her or him into my life. I surrender control to you in this situation. You go to God and you tell him what you need, you thank him for what you have, and then this peace comes. With our whole life, we need to choose surrender over control. Like it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Like everything that you are, we need to give our entire life over to God. But there's still areas in our life where we're trying to hold on to control, and they were never ours to control. And what we need to do is ask, is it worth my concern? Some of the things aren't worth any time or energy that we spend on them. Is it mine to control? Maybe there's something that you need to do. But as you look at the situation, maybe it's for God. If so, tell him what you need. Thank him for all he's done. And surrender this into his control. Control leads to worry and anxiety. But I believe surrender leads us to rest and peace. Jesus said, come to me. Come. Hey, come to me. Everyone who's weary, everyone who's heavy laden, who's got a burden on them, come to me. I'm going to give you rest. He's saying, surrender your life to me. He talks about a yoke, an act of like you're in control. Surrender your life and heart to me, and I bring rest. And then Paul says here, if you stop worrying and instead give it to God, if you surrender to God, it leads to peace. Man, I want to choose surrender over control because I want peace and rest. I want a life surrendered to Jesus. Jesus surrendered his life for you. He came for you. He died for you. He rose again from the grave for you. Just before he went to the cross, you find him praying in the garden, and he's looking up and he's saying, God, if there's any way that this can pass, like if there's any other way to make this happen, like, can we do that? But then he says this, not my will, but yours. What did he do? Surrender. He surrendered it into God's hands. God, this is, I surrender this to you. He literally surrendered his life for us on the cross. And so every once in a while at church, we like to take a moment to remember what Jesus did for us, and we do that through communion. And communion is an opportunity for you to remember all that Christ has done for you, to remember his body that was broken for you. That's why we take the bread. Jesus said before he was betrayed, he said, hey, this is my body. Take this bread. This represents my body. It's broken for you. And then we also take the juice, which represents the blood of Christ that was shed for you. The Bible says that without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. Because Christ gave up his life for you, surrendered his life for you on the cross, he took care of your sin. He said, I'm going to take that penalty from you. And then he rose from the grave, defeating sin and death so that you and I could one day too. We put our faith in him. So we take time to remember the body that was broken and the blood that was shed. Do that through communion. So we're going to do that in just a moment. But before we do, I want to give you a chance to just take a breath. I want to give you a chance to just close your eyes. Just close your eyes for a moment here. Is there a specific area in your life that you've been trying too hard to control? It's not yours to control. You need to surrender that. Maybe there's a specific area as we talked where you realize, man, I'm so focused on being the one doing all of this. I think God wants to release me from that. So in this moment before we take communion, just take time to give that to God. Like, God, I surrender this to you. Tell him what you need. Thank him for what you have. And then say it's yours. Maybe it's your entire life. Maybe you've never given your life to Christ. You've never said, hey, Jesus, I believe that you came and died on the cross for me, and I want a relationship with you. And today you need to choose surrendering your life to him. And then you can come forward, take communion for the first time, understanding that this was done for you. Maybe you're full of worry and you got the weight of the world on your shoulders. There's this heavy burden, and you just need to say, God, I want rest. I want to surrender it to you. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understandings. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Choose surrender over control. I'm going to give you a moment just to be with God for right now, and then I'm going to pray. And then after I pray, you can just come forward down these middle aisles as you feel led to participate in communion, and head back to your seat while everyone finishes, and then we're going to close in a worship song. Take just a moment between you and God. is weighty, it's heavy. And so many of us walk around with so much weight on us. And you came to give us rest. So my prayer right now is that there are people crying out to you, surrendering their life into your hands, surrendering and giving up control. I say, you lead, and I'll follow. You take the wheel. I'll let you drive for a moment. May we trust in you with all that we have, with all our heart. May we walk out of here finding that moment, finding that instant, finding that area in our life where we can choose surrender over control today. We give it to you. We love you. It's in your precious and holy name we pray.